my mother had gotten sick and sent away to a sanitarium, and my brother and I were moved into with my aunt's house, and then she lost the house, and then my father couldn't take care of us, so my brother and I were placed in an orphanage in Clifton. It still exists now as a assisted living for elderly people. And we spent about 4 years in the orphanage. And that's where I became interested in cartooning. Because in my house, the only paper I ever saw was the forwards. It was written purely in Yiddish. And I never saw an American newspaper until I was 6 years old in the home. And Sundays were the saving grace, because papers in New York, there were about 6 papers in New York and a paper in Philadelphia, all with comics. The only color that existed at that time in the print industry. The movies were in black and white. The world was in black and white. But comics were blasting in color. And Sunday mornings, I was alive because people came in from New York and New Jersey to visit their children or their relatives in the home, and they brought the papers with them. Papers in those days were wrapped in the comics. They were that important. So people never bought just one comic, one newspaper. They bought the News, Mirror, and American, because the 3 of them had different comics, the same news, but they always said it's for the children. But the comics were for everybody. And for me, it was a holiday every Sunday. So when people were visiting, I was in the library with the newspapers that had been brought and just went through all the comics one at a time. I had favorites and I built it up and decided to become a cartoonist at that point. That's really where it started, which was the worst news that my parents could have heard. Everybody that heard it thought I was insane, because I kept telling people in school that's what I wanted to do. And they kept telling me you have to have the plan B. It's not going to work, you got to have a plan B. So years later I came up with a plan B, which was make sure the plan A works. And it worked.